It's Friday. That means the BBE is live.
Nottingham ale, boys, Nottingham ale. No liquor on earth is like Nottingham ale. Nottingham ale, boys, Nottingham ale. No liquor on earth is like Nottingham ale. Nottingham ale, boys, Nottingham ale. No liquor on earth is like Nottingham ale. Nottingham ale, boys, Nottingham ale. No liquor on earth is like Nottingham ale.
And thanks so much for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome to the experience. If you're a returning guest, thanks so much for coming back. My name is Thomas Allen. I am one of the directors of the BBE, like everybody else on this planet, and I'm our resident singer.
I'm Leanne Del Ragusa, another director of the BBE and the resident flute player.
And I am Brandy Berry Benson, yet another director of the BBE. And I am super thrilled to have historical clarinetist, Shallomo player, Dominic Giardino with us. He works in I'm really curious. We're going to chat a lot about Colonial Williamsburg and all that good stuff. But thank you for joining us. We haven't had a clarinet player, as you know, the clarinet in the Baroque period, like barely intersect because of that Shallomo thing, which we're really excited to see later. So thanks for joining us, Dominic.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
All right. Well, we filled everybody else. We filled Dominic in before how this goes, but Leanne kicks us off. Leanne, do you want to lead us through your game? Because it's game time.
All right. So the first game is the sordid lives of composers. So how it works is I will read a paragraph. I may or may not leave out pertinent information that will give you the answer, but there will be 4 multiple choice composers on the screen that you get to choose from. But before you give us your answer, there will be a little linking music. All right, so without further ado, let's get started. The first question. Don't you love the pictures?
Perfect.
All right.
That's perfect.
I thought so. So this composer was a champion of the clarinet. He not only wrote symphonies, quartets, and concertos for the clarinet, but he also had them admitted into the orchestras of Paris in the middle of the 18th century. Then, it was in Mannheim, whose orchestra was made famous by this composer's direction, that young Mozart was first introduced to the sounds of the clarinets in the orchestra. The concerto in B-flat major that this composer wrote for clarinet and strings is one of his finest works. I've never played it, but maybe our guest has played it. It is probably the first example of a solo work for the clarinet, because no solo works for the instruments are known before 1757, which is also the year of this composer's death. Was this Mr. Holzbauer, Mr. von Weber, Mr. Stamitz, or Mr. Cannabich? But first, some thinking music. And since you're our guest, Dominic, you get to take the first stab at the answer.
I'm going to go ahead and say C, Johann Stamitz.
Do you have any reasoning why, or that's just your answer?
Well, Johann Stamitz is a Mannheim composer. He wrote a wonderful clarinet concerto in B flat for the clarinet and strings. He was not the first to write a clarinet concerto. Actually, we can talk about that if you want. But there are clarinet concertos from the 1740s. But Johann, I'm pretty confident. I'm feeling pretty good about Johann Stamitz.
All right. Thomas, Brandy, do you want to weigh in your answer?
Oh, we can't hear you, Thomas. But I'm also going with Stamitz.
Oh, I said, of course it's Stamitz. Who else would it be?
Yes, right. Well, the date,
Right.
but also the tie to Mozart. I don't know that the other guys had, that tie. So
yeah,
right. Very nice. Have you played this particular concerto, Dominic?
Not with orchestra, but it's like the first thing that we study with Eric is this piece. That's
nice.
Like our introduction to 5-key clarinets.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on to question number 2.
I mean, I'm guessing that was right?
Oh, yes.
I hope so.
I was just so excited that you got it right. Yes, it was C. Stamitz. All right.
Awesome.
So question number 2. Like many leading 18th century composers, this composer wrote music for wind bands. His known output in this field comprises a number of marches and military pieces. Considered to have an international style, this composer worked in Berlin, Milan, and London. He was known for his imaginative orchestration, with a greater freedom in the use of woodwind and pizzicato string effects, and the use of 2 orchestras in 3 of his symphonies. It is this composer who is credited with introducing London to the clarinet in 1751. Was it Franz Xaver Richter, J.C. Bach, Johann Samuel Schroeter, or Mozart? But first, some thinking music. Any guesses, Dominic?
Yeah, I'm inclined to say J.C. Bach. I'm inclined. We'll see.
All right.
We'll
All
see.
right. Thomas, Brandy, do you want to weigh in?
I mean, yeah.
Thomas, have you heard of all these composers?
At least 2, right? At least the last names of 2.
Right?
Leanne, this is a family show, so I can't say to you what I would really like to say to you for that one. So thank you.
Right.
I mean, I hadn't heard of all of these people before this question, so don't feel bad if you didn't know all of them.
I'm gonna say, yeah. J.C. Bach. I'm like, yeah. The part where you said that they lived in 3 different places. You said Berlin, London, and
Milan.
I mean, I thought it was going to be A and C, but Dominic is like has an inkling that it's B. So now I'm like really torn at this point.
I mean, Bach was born in Berlin, I think. He moves to Milan and works in Milan, and that's where he converts to Catholicism. And then he has a career in London. So those 3 cities seem pretty.
That does seem,
Plausible.
B. There we go.
Okay, well, I'm going to go for B because clearly Dominic read his grout and Stolda before he came on here. So, okay.
And he's a clarinet player, so he probably knows about all the clarinet stuff. Yeah. But yes, you are correct. It is B, J.C. Bach. Now, is he really considered the first person to bring the clarinet to London?
He is not. There's a Mr. Charles. Mr. Charles shows up in the 1720s or early 1730s with Chalumeau and clarinet. So
okay.
Yeah,
I didn't do extensive research for this question, so I'm sorry that I might have led you astray with my question.
No, this is great.
But
we can dispel some of the myths around clarinet,
I mean,
right?
That's your favorite BBE Live when our guests tell us how the questions go.
All this misinformation about historical clarinets floating around on CNN and Fox and stuff.
I know, right?
Thank you so much.
We just have to fix this. All right. Well, Dominic is off to a good start. He's gotten 2 answers correct. Well, let's see if we can stump him in the 3rd question with this cute little Chalumeau. So this composer, and he has one there for us to see. This composer wrote extensively for all sizes of Chalumeau and featured the instrument, often in groups of 2 or 3, in numerous overture suites, concertos, church sonatas, and trio sonatas. He is considered one of the most important composers for the Chalumeau. He knew how to use this instrument skillfully, despite its limited tonal range, which maybe only has 13 notes. He used it for sacred and secular music, and he can be seen as one of the most innovative composers and sound experimenters of the 18th century. Was it Johann Christoph Denner, Johann Joseph Fuchs, Antonio Vivaldi, or Christoph Graupner? But first, some thinking music. Dominic, do you know the answer?
I'm going to go with D, final answer.
Any reasoning why, or you just know it's D?
Well, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I'm just fairly confident knowing Graupner's output that we're talking about that guy.
All right, Tom.
I was
Thomas
gonna
and
go with
Brandy?
I was gonna go with C or D, just mostly because of our pre-show conversation. But I will go with D then because Dominic knows.
D for Dominic. Good, good.
For Dominic, I'm also going to go D only because I looked Grapner up for my trivia questions and saw the repertoire list. So I'm going D.
Well, you are correct. Grabner did write a lot for
A lot.
Shalamo.
Maybe
lot.
too much. Maybe too much. But we have the music.
But
so.
that means you have something to play on this cute little instrument.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
That you
All right,
get
well,
contracted to do all the time, I'm sure. All
Oh
the time.
yeah. Yeah, well, with the surplus of historical clarinetists floating around in the world, to actually get a group of Shalamo players together, it's no problem. It's no problem.
yeah, you could just do it, split second. All right, well, Dominic, you got 100% in my game. So now let's move on to Thomas's game,
Yeah, and
where maybe he will get a revenge.
Oh yeah, no, I was after the last time. I was like, no way, I'm being nice with y'all this time. Sorry, Dominic, you're collateral damage right now. So how this game works is I take my revenge by playing for you a mystery piece, although sometimes people know it. And on the next page, you'll see 3 composers that mystery piece could be. So we're going to try to take an educated guess on who it might be. I will then reveal what the song was, who wrote it, and who performed it, and then also a cat doppelganger of my choosing. And the cat doppelganger sometimes is relevant to what's going on, and sometimes it's just how I felt in the moment, so you have to kind of take what I give. So here we are. Here are your first 3 composers. You can tell we're going with a French theme for this one. And here is your mystery piece, which we'll play in whole because it's so quick. So. And I have no idea how they took it that fast because I've done this before and it is crazy. So clearly. So any thoughts, Dominique, on who this could be, or do you happen to know this piece?
Well, it's not Mozart. I can tell you that.
That is true.
And no, this is the part of the show where people can clearly say that clarinet isn't early music. So no, I have no idea. I'm going to go ahead and say B. Guess? I'll say B. I don't know. Philippe Verdelot.
Excellent. Leanne, Brandy, any thoughts who this could be?
Well, Thomas, I have not heard of all of these composers. You will be happy to know you have stumped me there.
Excellent.
But I kind of think B, it sounds like a drink, like Merlot, Verdelot. So I was thinking that only for that reason, but because I don't really know.
I mean, yeah, sure. Why not? Good. Brandy, any thoughts? Do you know this piece?
I did not know this piece. I only know of B and C as composers. I'm going to go with Arcadelt just because I know that person a little bit more.
All right.
And that's it. There's no scholarly reasoning behind it.
All right. 2 B's and a C. Well, I'm going scorched earth because you all were wrong. It was totally Pierre. and I couldn't find an actual image of Pierre, so I just had to substitute a French guy.
I'm sure it's close. It's got to be close.
Oh, it's authentic. I mean, clearly it's very authentic.
And he has his Merlot.
Yeah, he does have a Merlot, yes. And his matching cat, too. Also named Pierre. So, and if there's anybody from France watching this, I'm so sorry. So, okay, great. Moving on to my second one. So here we have Thomas, William, and Orlando. And here we'll hear just a snippet of this mystery tune. All right, so we'll stop right there. I assume people have heard of at least one person on this list, probably.
Yeah.
All right, Dominic, you're right. You're first up. Any thoughts on who this could be?
It's definitely one of them. I can tell you that much. I recognize all three of these names. I'm
we're
going to go with
getting there.
C. I'm going to go with C. Orlando DeLasso. Yeah.
Good, Orlando. Excellent. Leanne, Brandy, any thoughts on this one?
I feel pretty confident about C.
C. Any reason why?
The language. Yeah.
Yeah, I was also kind of leaning towards C as well. So it looks like we're all going towards C.
What? Why the language? I'm just curious.
He is the only. I mean, but yeah, I haven't. It sounded. I mean, I'm terrible with languages, but it wasn't English for sure. So
That's true.
It sounded Frenchy, and
You're correct.
Lasso is the only one I know of that wrote in that language.
Well, good work. So we got a 50%, which is still a failing grade. Orlando DeLasso. Good job, everybody. And this was a great picture of Orlando, and I couldn't think of a more grumpy looking cat than just like sphinxes. So. And I have a special treat. It's not a competition, but in this whole process, I found this great album, which actually has both of these tunes on it, but in a very different context. And I have to share about like 25 seconds of this first track, which is the original one, the Il est bel bon, which you heard the first right off the bat. So if you're ready for it. So this is Shingle 2, and it's love songs for madrigals and madrigals.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just looking at like just the clothes, and then accompanied by electric piano, harpsichord, ARP synthesizer, bass guitar, and drums. That is special, right there.
Isn't it? It's actually it kind of works a little bit, and like yeah. I posted it on the historical shit posting thing this morning on Facebook, but nobody's responded, and I'm like, this is what everybody should be watching. But okay, whatever. So anyway, I thought I'd share this historical record with you all. All right, good job. So we got 50-50, and now we'll move on to Brandy, who will inevitably stump all of us probably.
We'll see. All right, so this is 2 truths and a lie. So basically, I'm going to read 3 statements or very short stories, and it is your job to pick which one is false. And so, you know, we've got our little Pinocchio BBE man right there. To guide the way. He doesn't always point towards the right answer, though, so just so you know. But this first batch here is about Johann Christoph Dinner, which is a very familiar name to you, I am so sure. And so here we are. So number 1, Johann Christoph Dinner learned the craft of instrument building of woodwind instruments from his father and had 2 sons that carried on that family legacy after he had passed. And then the second one, Dinner is credited with inventing the clarinet through a series of attempts to improve the chalumeau. You can tell us your scholarly research behind that one. And then number 3, though Dinner is originally from Nuremberg, he spent the majority of his time performing and building instruments for the Medici court in Florence. So which one is the lie? And now a little thinking music.
Before you give your answer, Dominic, Brandy likes to change one word.
Okay.
Just
or
so,
a date.
Or a date by like 2 years, you know.
All right. That's good to know.
It's dirty.
Good to know.
It's very dirty.
She plays tricky.
I'm going to say, I'm going to say that the third is the lie. I'm going to say the third is a lie with no serious scholarship to back me up. having read the first chapter of The Clarinet by Eric, I'm going to say the third is a lie.
Cool.
We'll
Thomas,
see.
Ann, any thoughts on why you think it's the lie?
Because I'm pretty sure that the first two are true.
Okay.
Well, I know
Based-
he built instruments, but did he have
Yeah.
sons?
Yeah. I mean, it was a family business as far
Okay.
as I know, and the story of how the clarinet is born, I don't think there's much credit to it, but I've heard too from credible sources. So we'll see.
All right. Well, I'll go with 3 too because Dominic said 3.
Yeah, I was going with 3 just because the first 2 just seemed very like they're probably right. Like there wasn't anything controversial, whereas I think the third has more detail and therefore could have like one thing wrong, but we'll see.
Cool. So final answer for all you guys, number 3.
Final answer.
Excellent. And you got it right. And it's actually more than one thing wrong with this statement. So Denner actually was originally from Leipzig, and as far as I know, did not spend the majority of his time in the Medici court. I think it was one of his sons actually that went to Florence. So yeah, plenty wrong with that sentence for sure.
Excellent.
All right. This is the second batch. Now, this is actually about firsts for the Chalumeau, if you will. So, the word Chalumeau was first seen in print in the 1630s, though it is believed to have been used earlier by most scholars. So, it's believed, I should word that sentence differently. It's believed by scholars to have been used earlier. That makes sense. All right. So the second one, the first 3D printed Chalumeau was produced in the U.S. and modeled after a 16th century French idioglat. I don't know how to say that. Reed pipe with 8 tone holes. And then the third one, the first 18th century Viennese work to have a designated Chalumeau part was an opera composed by Giovanni Bononcini. This one was the lie and a little thinking music.
Okay. Well,
I will preface this with I would definitely not have gotten any of these questions right.
yeah. I mean, so we know that the word Chalumeau is being used before the 17th century. I'm pretty sure we're confident about that. So I'm going to say that's a truth. And then in what I know about Chalumeau repertoire from Vienna, it's introduced by Italians in the early 18th century. So I'm going to say 3 is also true. I don't know anything about 3D printed instruments, so 2 will be my lie.
All right, excellent. Thomas and Ann?
I wanted to say number 2 was true just because it's so like, there's something about it that just seems completely ridiculous and therefore obviously true. But
yet there's so many details in there that something could be wrong.
I know.
I was also going to say number 2. So
I'm noticing, is Viennese spelled correct? I'm not trying to call anybody out here, but I'm looking for very small things that might be throwing me off.
That wouldn't affect whether it's
okay.
true.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm sure it is.
I think Brandy sent this to me very late at night, so
It's quite possible that the Viennese. I lose my spelling capabilities as the night goes on.
you just kept holding the
All
E.
All right. I know I'm the holdout. Dominic at least presented evidence that number 3 was probably true, so I will go with number 2 reluctantly, although I'd like to believe that it's true.
All right. Well, you guys got it. It is, in fact, number 2. To my knowledge, there has not been a 3D printed Chalumeau. So there you go. There you have it. That is the false part of that statement. Unless someone out there, writes me and says, "Oh, in fact, here is my picture of my 3D printed Chalumeau."
There is. I just Googled it.
Well,
Of course.
is it modeled after the 16th century French version?
That part I can't tell you, but I found a picture of a 3D printed Chalumeau. So There you
Excellent.
go.
Well, you'll have to tell us, Dominic, if in fact this trivia was wrong. You could show him the picture and be like, "Is this the one?" That's blah, blah, blah. Anyway, all right. And now the third batch of statements here. Christoph, this is all about Grabner, actually, our old friend Grabner here. So Christoph Grabner wrote multiple concertos and overture suites that included multiple Chalumeau parts. Grabner's student Foch wrote the first sacred cantata that had 2 Chalumeau obbligato parts. And then finally, Grabner would have held the position of Thomas Cantor in Leipzig if his patron hadn't refused to release him from his contract. The position was given to Mr. Johann Sebastian Bach instead. So which one is the lie? And now for a little thinking music.
This is all Dominic.
So I'm pretty sure that 3 is true, because the story goes Bach is 3rd in line for the job or something. And Grabner, I know, is offered the position. I want to say, I mean, number 1, he wrote like a ton of overtures for multiple Chalumeau, but in terms of concerti, I'm not actually familiar with a Grabner concerto for Chalumeau, unless I'm really blanking. But then again, I don't think, well, but for 2. All right, I'm just gonna say number 1 is the lie. And sorry for all of those clarinetists tuning in, I'm sure. But number 1 will be the lie.
All right, number 1 it is. Let's do it.
I'm gonna guess number 2 is the lie.
Cool. Any particular reason?
2 Chalumeau obbligato parts. I just don't know about that. But maybe it's out there. I just don't know about it because I haven't researched it.
Are you saying that they're not important enough to have 2 obbligato parts?
I think there should be like a whole herd of them, like 8 or 10.
Good save.
Well, let's not get carried away. Let's rein
4?
it back in.
Maybe 4.
As the Chalumeau player, I don't want to play with too many other Chalumeau. Excellent. Well, in fact, you were a little bit stumped on this one. It was number 2. Way to go.
Oh.
Bring you from the pack. So I did see, maybe this is wrong. You can tell me, Dominic. Maybe this is how the trivia should go. I did find a couple of concertos that had 2 Chalumeau parts. So,
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah.
All right, great. I'll send them my way.
So give me the point back if that's, actually bonus too. Who was actually first in line for that position? Because there were 3 people in line. J.S. Bach was the third.
Was it Telemann?
Yes, Telemann was the first contender. Yep.
Well, unfortunately, Dominic, since you got 1 wrong about your instrument, your last degree from an awarding university or college will now be revoked. So
Ours was about a long time ago, so you can join the club.
Yeah.
It's fine. I'll take it.
Which, by the way, actually, I'm curious. Have you ever played Mozart's version of the Messiah that has the 2 clarinet?
I haven't, but I love listening to it. But it's all of Mozart's rearrangements of Handel and trying to think. There's some other stuff where he throws in some clarinet, and it's really nice. Yeah. Really, really nice music.
I've only played it once, and down in Texas, actually. And that was a really cool experience because we did do it at 4:30 and all of that. And but that's the only other time I've ever heard. I don't know. Anyway, but that's not the point of this part of the chat. This part of the chat is to find all of your family secrets, and if you have other hidden Chalumeaus around the world in your offshore accounts, maybe filled with, I don't know, gold and jewels. I'm just kidding. but actually, we would love to hear, what have you been up to? Because you've been telling us. So one of the kind of odd things about the pandemic for you is actually you were more busy. And I would love to hear more about that and all of the historical interpretive stuff that you do, Colonial Williamsburg, et cetera, et cetera. So take it away.
Yeah, so, obviously the world changed a lot about 14 months ago. And my full-time gig before the pandemic and right now is working as an interpreter at the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation. So when the shutdown happened, we began to expand our sort of digital reach. So I've been working with their digital content team and trying to bring a lot of that work to places like Facebook and Instagram for people to actually engage with it. But what's come with that is a real opportunity to explore some of the music making that's happening at CW. So, for instance, this coming June, we have a special program where I think you had David McCormick on before.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're collaborating with David and doing a whole episode on basically 18th century Afro-Virginian and African music here at Colonial Williamsburg, because we have an ensemble that specializes in that. We were able to put together a Beethoven 250th anniversary project with a very, 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 very small audience, but featuring an original 1816 Broadwood piano that the foundation owns. And then, yeah, more or less trying to balance social distancing with a open living history museum since last June. So things have been busy at the foundation themselves, but I've definitely been thankful to have some opportunities to get some playing. And actually I was pleasantly surprised that JC Bach made an appearance, because a lot of the research that I do at Colonial Williamsburg has to do explicitly with military bands, of which JC Bach, as you said, makes, an appearance. So
Nice.
yeah.
How did you get into playing the Shalamo? I mean, was that like just obviously you must have started off as a clarinet player and then,
Yeah.
Tell us the story. How does one find out about the Shalamo?
Honestly, one finds out about the Shalamo because they go to study historical clarinet and they're told that you should also play the Shalamo. So that's how I discovered the Shalamo. As I was saying to you guys before, I think the broadcast started, I got into historical performance from the other direction, kind of coming from the late 19th century and working backwards. And in fact, most of the work that I did in my master's was all on Carl Maria von Weber and Heinrich Beermann, and really studying that sweet spot of German music making in the early 19th century. But I've had some interesting opportunities to play Shalamo. In fact, that's where I met Leanne, was the first time that I played, not first time I played Shalamo, but bass Shalamo, which is a funny instrument. But yeah, I'm going to be, perfectly honest with you. I'm not an authority on the Shalamo. I should not be seen as an authority on the Shalamo, but I love playing it. And yeah.
Well, can you show us? I know you have a little Shalamo there. Would they tell us a little bit about your little pet Shalamo?
Yeah, so this is an instrument that I very recently acquired. It's a tiny little guy. This is a soprano Shalamo. And what you're looking at essentially is, it's not a clarinet, but in many ways it looks like one. You have a single reed that you can place right there, tie it on with a ligature. But the biggest difference between a clarinet and a Shalamo has to do with where the holes are drilled. So you'll see the holes are diametrically drilled on either side there, directly across, which prevents the instrument from overblowing, which is why you only have about 12 or 13 notes that you can actually play on it, as opposed to a clarinet where you have, well, let me take the mouthpiece off here, where you actually have a bit of space between where those holes are drilled. And for whatever reason, I'm not a physics person, for whatever reason, this allows the instrument to overblow the way it does and get the type of range that a clarinet has. And it's funny too that you had that question about, whether or not Denner invented the clarinet by accident, by just accidentally drilling a hole in the wrong place, which seems kind of egregious, right? Maybe he had a few glasses of Merlot before he started drilling, but I don't understand how that could be possible. But nevertheless, it's a fun story.
Is there like I'm curious about this, like, what kind of reeds, or what would the reeds that people would have played on the Shalamo, what would they have been made out of? Would they be any different than like what we're using today for modern clarinets or saxophones, or like what's the
more or less you're still looking at cane reeds. You're definitely looking at cane reeds, but where we're sourcing our cane from would have been the ideal cane in the 18th century as well. So all of us today who play these instruments, a lot of people play German cut reeds. I play on clarinets. I play French E-flat clarinet reeds that are just very, very thin, like 1.5 weight, because the German mouthpiece makes a little bit more resistance. But yeah, generally speaking, that's kind of one of these modern things that we slip in there that's close enough to what they were doing in the 18th century. And it's always easier to buy reeds and make them. So sorry, oboe players and bassoon players.
Nice. Excellent. And how did, I mean, with the with Colonial Williamsburg, so going digital and all of that, what is that? Has that opened up more possibilities for you guys, like going forward? I mean, is that something you're going to continue?
Yeah, for sure. I'm actually getting ready for a kind of a big move to New Haven, Connecticut in June. My partner graduated from law school here, and she has a clerkship set up. But I'm thankful that actually after this whole year of working remotely and working digitally, that I'm going to be able to retain a few different jobs with Colonial Williamsburg. And one of them is going to be, of course, producing digital content, but the other will be, and something to keep your eye out for, we're going to start curating a mini concert series, all focused on early music stuff from diverse cultural perspectives in the Atlantic world. So not just looking at, what English people were playing, but we have a concert set up that will be more intensely exploring African music of the 18th century, kind of trying to undigest a lot of the baggage we get from Europeans notating African music, which is obviously very problematic and, to the best of my knowledge, hasn't been looked into to any great degree. But yeah, there are some opportunities on the horizon. And, for those viewing out there who play gamba or violin, flute, harpsichord, we do have a full-time Baroque ensemble at Colonial Williamsburg. It's not something that I work explicitly with, but something to keep on your radar for if someone's looking for health insurance and a full-time gig. It's not a bad place to be if you can put on a costume. So.
Now, have you performed in period costume? I mean, you must all the time, or?
I work full time in period costume because I do military interpretation. So yeah, I'm always wearing 18th century uniforms and stuff like that. And some of the work that I've done with them has included performing. But I've gotten lucky. The concerts that I've done at Colonial Williamsburg, I've managed to motivate in the direction of uncostumed. So yeah. I prefer to perform uncostumed. I know there's a lot of value to it, but I prefer concert black when I can get away with it.
Sure.
Are your costumes wool? I'm sure, like, they're hot.
Yeah. I wear a lot of wool. Sweating off a lot of weight here in Virginia. So.
Yeah, no kidding. Especially this time of year.
Yes, that's for sure.
Yeah.
How much of your closet still has those period costumes?
A lot of it. Yeah, I have an entire closet in the first floor of my apartment that is dedicated to that stuff. So I'll be glad to shed it in June, gain a little bit more of my closet space back. But yeah, it's been interesting. I've had the job for about 2 years now. It's been great.
So I have a question about your costumes. So is it like Mickey? We're going to relate it to Mickey Mouse for a second. So you know how Mickey Mouse has like different outfits for different occasions?
Sure, yeah.
Do you have different costumes? Like, I don't know, like if you're going to a ball or are they just mostly military-esque?
Yeah, no, that's actually, I have an answer for that. So I work part-time, at night as a musician, in addition to my full-time day job doing military interpretation. And for the music job specifically, they assigned me 2 different wigs that I have not had the opportunity to wear. But I have a wig for casual attire and I have a wig for more genteel or aristocratic attire. So yeah, even from what you're putting on your head, it's not just about the jacket you're wearing. There's some serious work that's been done in 18th century fashion at Colonial Williamsburg. And one of the things that we really do pride ourselves on is trying to get it as right as humanly possible, not just for, being out in town, but putting the clothing in context. So the vast majority of people on the streets are just wearing regular clothes. But when you go to an event at the governor's palace, for instance, the musicians that you will see there are wearing silk like they would have worn in the 18th century, and really trying to keep it as buttoned up as humanly possible.
I have a question about clarinet and or chalumeau, but maybe clarinet. So, thinking about kind of colonial North America. Like, what are what is like maybe one or two of the really interesting things you've found in your research, or that you've encountered in terms of like the clarinet's kind of early introduction to the colonies, like whether it's performances or, you know, somebody brought it over and was teaching it? Like, what was like one or two really interesting early things about the clarinet in North America?
I mean, I think the general understanding of the clarinet throughout the 18th century is that it kind of comes in onto the stage in the latter part, right? Mozart is like given the credit for making the clarinet what it is, but you know, the reality of the situation is we have clarinets here in North America as early as the 1750s. There's an ad in a newspaper published in Perth Amboy, New Jersey, in I think 1756, of an officer looking to fill in a few positions in his military band. And that's really where we start to see the introduction of the clarinet to North America, is in the context of military bands, which again, kind of a lot of the baggage we have associates military bands with fife and drum corps. Well, fife and drum corps weren't necessarily really a thing. Fifers and drummers are military signalmen. If you wanted a concertizing organization, that was going to be a band of music, which is what Johann Christian Bach wrote for. 2 oboes, 2 clarinets, 2 bassoons, 2 horns. And here in North America, we see that explode during the American Revolutionary War as the British keep sending over regiments and regiments and regiments and are accompanied by bands and bands and bands, and Americans trying to replicate that. So here in Virginia, we have the first band composed of Virginians raised in about 1779 and 1780. And to the best of my knowledge, these are the first full-time professional wind players in Virginia, period. So.
Yeah, it's really interesting because like I think we kind of forget like the clarinet didn't just exist in nature in North America. They had to come over and somebody had to start doing something with it. So like, how did that happen? It's really interesting.
Yeah. So much of wind music innovation comes directly from the military world. I mean, when officers and generals are starting to dish out the cash to pay these musicians, that's when we see these guys really take the stage. I mean, even Jefferson in 1779, I believe he writes a letter saying he wants to start a band of music at Monticello. He perhaps had other things he should have been worrying about in 1779 because the British Army is just right about to invade Virginia, but that's fine. He wanted good music. But it was on people's radar. Clarinets were on people's radar.
That's very cool.
Just some.
Yeah, wouldn't have expected that. Like, you know, that's how the instrument got introduced over here. So, yeah, that's very cool. Awesome. And
do you have?
Oh, go ahead, Leanne. Sorry.
I was just going to ask if you had any concerts looming in the horizon that weren't necessarily at CW. I know you just had one. But...
Yeah, I just got back from St. Louis last week, but right now the agenda is pretty thin until spring 2022. I want to say there's some things lined up for then, but just had a CD released, which was pretty exciting. If people are interested in listening to later 19th century American band music, it's actually available on YouTube. The CD is called The Gilded Age. And I was lucky enough to be able to record actually a solo concerto on that album. So that was kind of fun. That was a project we recorded back in 2018, and it just was finally released a few months ago. And then there's another CD that's in production that we're hoping is going to be released again by spring 2022. So things are in the future, but a little bit away.
That's good.
Yeah, for sure.
Very, very cool. That's awesome. Well, do you have any parting words of wisdom that you would like to give our viewers here?
You know, if there's one thing that I could just reiterate, it's that the clarinet existed in the 18th century. It was there, it was alive, it was well. It actually existed at the same time as the Chalumeau. They're more or less completely concurrent, and look for it because you'll find it. So
or buy one.
or buy one, yeah.
There's so many opportunities to perform music with the clarinet that would require somebody to hire a clarinetist with said clarinet.
There's a lot of music out there. I mean, if you get away from the 3 composers we all love to play, there's a lot of music out there. There's a lot of music.
Yeah, absolutely. So very
All right. Cool. Well, Dominic, thanks so much for joining us today on the BBE Live. It was a pleasure to get to grill you. It was a lot of fun.
Pleasure being grilled. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much to everybody out there who tuned in throughout the show. We'll tune into the show in the future. And to my wonderful colleagues and friends, Brandy and Leanne, for always coming up with brilliant ways to basically show why none of us should be professional musicians. So thank you so much. We'll be back next Friday because the BBE is live almost every Friday. And we'll see you then. Have a great week.
Nottingham ale, boys, Nottingham ale. No liquor on earth is like Nottingham ale. Nottingham ale, boys, Nottingham ale. No liquor on earth is like Nottingham ale.